Welcome into today's podcast. This is the Zach Moore podcast. I don't know what episode we're on, but big show today. I have no idea how long this show is going to be. Got a lot of stuff um in today's show that I am excited to do. I don't know if we'll even get to all of it because I want to do a deep dive on multiple of these stories, multiple of these studies. Crazy stuff involving foreign objects from outside of our universe. We have uh people creating a camera that will take 1,000-year photo, which is interesting. We also got an update on the Osiris-Rex mission. And we got some pretty interesting studies that I really wanted to talk about kind of the future of our civilization, of humans, and whether or not we'll be able to survive. So hopefully you'll stay a while and we'll get to hang out. We'll get to go through some of these stories together. I'll do my best to add a little bit of flavor to them and make this a little bit enjoyable while we talk about some of the more cool things. As not I almost said as always, but as always, as of recently, Carmela status. She is at I forget the place. I forget the name of the place, but she goes to this daycare place. Just because it's a way for her to get to be social with other dogs. But it also allows for me to obviously record these shows without being interrupted. So it's a win for her and it's a win for me, and it's like 20-25 bucks or something like that. I mean, we can do it for, I think if you do like 3 hours, it's like 15 bucks. But if you leave her for, I mean, I've left her for 6 hours before. 6 hours before, I think. Yeah, I want to say 6 hours. And I mean, that was 35, or no, that was 30 bucks. Sorry. So that's where she's at. Hopefully she's enjoying herself. She does really good with the other dogs. They always say that she's really good. She's just very social, and that's good. All right, but on today's show, let's get right into one of the first. It's not really even a story. It's a first topic, but a topic that I think is important because, well, one, I mean, a lot of people hold this particular set of beliefs, but also there's a weird way in which this, I guess we'll call it a debate or this conversation or this topic, people say that it's dangerous and that it's something that needs to be taken away, and people can't have this set of beliefs because it's harmful and dangerous. So we'll also talk about that aspect of these particular set of beliefs and why I basically believe that if we have conversations about this stuff in a respectful and kind manner, we can actually come to some form of agreement. We don't have to say that people who hold these certain beliefs are crazy weirdos, even if we're able to fundamentally prove them wrong. Just treat people with respect. And that's what I want to talk about first, because we are going to talk about the thing we are actually going to talk about in this discussion of what we will be talking about is flat Earth. I do not know how many were thinking I was going to talk about flat Earth, and particularly as you can see in the article right here, 5 ways to disprove flat Earth from your backyard. Now, this is a topic in which, I mean, I've been watching Joe Rogan for a couple years now. And I haven't seen too much. I can't give you an episode of when I started, but I have not seen too much of his very early days. So the 2013, 14, 15, I didn't really watch any or much of those shows. Simply because I was in middle school going into high school, and I just wasn't listening to podcasts. I wasn't listening to anything other than music at that time. That was when I was a senior in high school, was when I first listened to a podcast. And then that changed my entire life. I mean, that's the reason why I'm doing this literally right now. Literally in this city too. We moved here so that um for both my wife and myself, and also my wife. You know. She knows. Big time things, big tings, big tings. But we moved to this city for particular reasons, and now she's out there. The reason why we moved here, she got that on lock. She is doing amazing things and could not be more proud of her. And you need people like that in your life, because when somebody, say your wife or your girlfriend or something, achieves something that they've been working so long to actually do, and then they talk about it and it kind of dies down. And they talk about it, they're like, man, I really want this job. Man, I really want to get into this school. Man, I really want to get this particular professor. Man, I want to get this. Man, I want to get this. And then fast forward, and over not the course of a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or even on a first try, they get this thing that they've wanted for literally years at this point. And when you have somebody that you're in love with and that you care deeply for, and they're able to do this, um, it's awesome because you're so happy for them. And that's how I feel about my wife with her recent um stuff going on in her life. So shout out to her. But anyways, let's talk about 5 ways to disprove flat Earth from your backyard. Now, I think that this is an interesting article, partly because of the tone of the article. I'm not going to read too much of it, but I do think that it is important to talk about kind of a little bit of this discussion as well. And I'm going to read a book. I'm going to give you quotes, going to give you all this different stuff. And it's going to be just a fun thing, right? All right. So let's start off. I mean, from this first paragraph, you can kind of get what we're going to be talking about. Have you ever proved that the earth isn't flat? While flat earthers are one of the more out there conspiracy groups, it's fun to disprove them with simple tests in your backyard. It has been scientific consensus for hundreds of years that the earth is a near perfect sphere. Okay. Don't have an issue with anything other than the tone. It's fun to disprove them with simple tests in your backyards. Is it fun? I mean, I wouldn't say it's fun. It's just, well, we'll continue on, but it's starting off with a tone that I don't think is entirely respectful. But let's continue on. Bewildering as it may be, some people just refuse to believe the mountains of evidence proving a spherical Earth. Once again, the statement is true, but the tone is off for me. That's all I'm saying. It seems unlikely that anything will convince these believers of a different worldview. Maybe the existence of flat earthers is a good reason to think critically about astronomy yourself, to actually understand why the Earth is round. Imagine we didn't have those pictures from space. Would you believe in the round Earth then? Many of the flat earthers' convictions come from how flat the Earth seems from our perspective. And I'm also going to try and do my best to provide arguments from the flat Earth perspective. Now, I do not come from this perspective, and I do not know anybody who holds the belief that the world is flat. I don't know many people who think about the shape of the Earth or could tell you why the Earth is round. They would just say, we have pictures of it, which is true. We have live feeds and live cams from the International Space Station right now that are going 24 hours a day. And many of the things that we use, such as satellites, such as GPS, all of that stuff is only done through having objects outside of our world orbiting around a sphere. So I don't want to harbor on this point too much, but just once again, the tone of this is interesting, I think. Fortunately, there are multiple easy tests you can perform at your home to prove that the Earth is indeed round. It can't be that difficult to figure out if Aristotle proved the round Earth more than 2,000 years ago with few scientific instruments. Now, let's go into our book. Let's stop the share right here, and let's go read. Obviously with the times, I'm not going to make any other comment, but say, great book. I have not completely finished it, but it is one of the books that early on in my interest into the topic of space and the cosmos and what is out there, and these bigger life questions that I started to have, is one of the earliest books that I ever got was a book called A Brief History of Time from the Big Bang to Black Holes. Now, the author of this book is Stephen Hawking, right here. I have no idea if this is going to be backwards or forwards in after I post this, so I apologize if it is backwards, but good book. Good author as well. He wrote a very good book. Now, there are some things going on in the news currently about this author that I will not comment on, because I cannot verify those claims for myself, and I'm not going to research into those claims. And if you do not know what I'm talking about, I suggest you look it up. But the contributions that this man made to science, and particularly the stuff in this book, had a profound influence on me when I was just beginning. This was back when I was in college, just when I was beginning to become interested in this topic. So very, very highly recommend this book because it kind of gives a very digestible way to understand some of the most like high level stuff like quantum mechanics, understanding general relativity, and what I'm going to read now, understanding how we've arrived to believe that one, the Earth is round, one, to have direct lines of evidence of where the sun is in relation to us in our galaxy and then in the universe, and kind of how we've come to this conclusion of things such as the Big Bang and further on. So this is in A Brief History of Time. As long ago as 340 BC, the Greek philosopher Aristotle, in his book On the Heavens, was able to put forward two good arguments for believing that the Earth was a round sphere, rather than a flat plate. First, he realized that eclipses of the moon were caused by the Earth coming between the sun and the moon. The Earth's shadow on the moon was always round, which would be true only if the Earth was spherical. If the Earth had been a flat disk, the shadow would have been elongated and elliptical, unless the eclipse always occurred at a time when the sun was directly under the center of the disk. Second, the Greeks knew from their travels that the North Star appeared lower in the sky when viewed in the south than it did in more northerly regions. Since the North Star lies over the North Pole, it appears to be directly above an observer at the North Pole, but to someone looking at from the equator, it appears to lie just at the horizon. From the difference in the apparent position of the North Star in Egypt and Greece, Aristotle even quoted an estimate that the distance around the Earth was 400,000 stadia. It is not known exactly what length a stadium was, but it may have been about 200 yards, which would make Aristotle's estimate about twice the currently accepted figure. The Greeks even had a third argument that the Earth must be round, for why else does one first see the sails of a ship coming over the horizon and only later see the whole? So very, very early on, there were these observations, right? I mean, you talk about Greece and then Egypt. The difference from that, if you look at the surface of the Earth, is not too much, but it is enough to make these observations. And then obviously, once we get into flying or I guess going further back, riding boats around, the cosmos and the idea of a flat Earth is that much. I mean, not a flat Earth, but a spherical Earth is that much more important because you're now navigating based on where the stars are on a sphere. So that's kind of a cool little thing about Aristotle and kind of the very, very early kind of beliefs and thoughts about kind of our Earth and really putting to task, well, where are we and what are we on, basically. So let's continue on. Now let's get into what the flat earthers believe according to themselves. And once again, these first three words are, I don't like the tone. It's condescending. Stated so eloquent on the Flat Earth Society website, the evidence for a flat earth is derived from many different facts of science and philosophy. The simplest is by relying on one's own sense to discern the true nature of the world around us. The world looks flat. The bottoms of clouds are flat. These are all examples of your senses telling you that we do not live on a spherical, heliocentric world. Okay, gotcha. Because the world in which you live in, if I go walk down the street right now and I look, or if I go out to the ocean and I look out, I don't see a curve. I've been on planes. Obviously I lived in Connecticut, right close to the shore, so I was able to see the ocean a lot. The earth looks flat. It appeared flat when I would look out into the ocean. It would appear flat when I'm flying 30,000 feet above the ground. I do not see a curve. This is true. Bottom is the clouds are flat, I guess. I don't know. But what it is saying is true. Once again, the tone is, I don't like it. I don't like that. Just say this is what their beliefs are. But that's a personal gripe that I have. Then it goes on to say, I gotta show you this one. I gotta show you. It goes on to say this. Without any greater evidence than one's own experiences, it would be more excusable to believe the earth is flat. I can walk as far as possible in a single direction and the ground and horizon will always appear flat to my eyeballs. That lived experience in large part is why this flat earth conspiracy theory has been so sticky through millennia. The shape of the earth just doesn't seem round. It is impossible to see the curvature of the earth from ground level. That is true. Now, the reason for that is because we live on a pretty big sphere. While most of us are convinced on the round earth by the incredible NASA photos from space, flat earthers aren't so easily swayed. Another example. These unusual people think photos from space are cleverly manipulated and that space travel is the conspiracy. These unusual people. Okay. Think photos from space are clearly manipulated. There have been photos of space that have been clearly manipulated. However, not all photos and not all videos are clearly manipulated. There are examples though. There are examples, and it would be very easy to pull up an example of something that just doesn't seem right about a video from space. And I would argue and say that there's a whole lot of videos where you can just see that it's just a camera, just taking photos, even on the early lunar missions, many of those pictures on the early Apollo missions, when they're orbiting the moon and then when they're landing on the moon and they're on the surface, you can tell that that's just a camera taking that. That's not a Hollywood set. It's not anything like that. But once again, in this argument, let's be respectful. I mean, some of these phrases are wild. What did it say? What did it say? These unusual people. All right. The development of modern flat Earth theory. The history of the flat Earth theory and its followers are comical at best, deadly at worst. Now, what is this a link to? What is this a link to? NPR. Daredevil Mad Mike Hughes killed in crash of homemade rocket. You wanted to see if the world was flat? Oh man. Mad Mike Hughes was killed in a rocket launch gone wrong Saturday in Barstow, California. He was 64. 152. I'm not sure how high, but his goal was 5,000 feet. Then it did an arc and came straight down and nosedived into the desert floor about a half mile away from the launch pad. Oh my Lord. Oh man. Jeez. He was previously launched in March 2018 when he soared 1,875 feet in the Mojave Desert. Let's see this. And we got a video. Here, let me share the audio. Hold on, let me go back. Share sound. Okay. All right, let's listen. No ad, no ad. Yes.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Come on.
Can you hear me?
1 minute and 22 seconds inside. He's not taking off.
Oh!
Whoa! Holy! Look at that! I don't know if you see that. Oh, they're coming down.
Wow.
Oh, God. You see that?
That was crazy.
You see that? I just hope he make it all right down, though.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
God. Look at that. Woo-hoo!
Look at that, man.
Secondary.
Wow.
Oh, oh.
Man, that
Man.
hard too.
All right.
Oh.
This seat, my seat. 1, 2, 3. Just a second, please, please, please. Easy, easy, easy.
Easy, guys, easy.
I don't know if I broke my back. Please, I don't know if I broke my back. Please, easy, easy. Have him. Please, guys.
We are, mate.
No, dude. No, I'm fine. Just my
Don't
wrist.
twist him.
Just keep him in line.
Where do you want to go?
I don't know.
Back on that straight ground right there.
I need to lay down something flat, please. Come here, right here.
Lay him down, guys. Lay him down.
And I need something on my lower part of my back. Please.
On the small of his back.
Something on my back, please.
All right,
Doesn't hurt.
Oh, man. Oh, man. He emerged relatively unscathed at the time until he had pain in his back, but he's glad to not have chickened out. Wow. Holds a record for the longest limousine ramp jump. Okay, here we go. Who had been writing a lengthy profile, Hughes said the steam-powered rocket launches were intended to actually lend credence to Hughes's noted flat Earth belief. So he was doing this to see if the Earth was flat. Okay. Oh man. Oh man. Crazy. Jeez, RIP that guy. He world record holder though. But tough way to go. Really bad way to go. Comical at best, deadly at worst. Yeah, it can be deadly. Can be deadly trying to prove that the Earth is flat. Fits with the disturbing trends America is believing in science less and less. Modern flat Earth conspiracy started in 1849. Then 1865, a book was published. Samuel Shelton created the International Flat Earth Research Society, later shortened to the Flat Earth Society. In 1956 in Dover, England, the society garnered flat earth theories together and promoted their wacky ideology. Okay. The Flat Earth Society has a well built out wiki and savvy social media that answers all your questions and curiosities about how the spherical Earth is the host. Okay. Now we get into the 5 experiments to prove that the Earth is round. All right. Watch a lunar eclipse. All right. I have actually done this. I talked about it maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago about how in college I saw a lunar eclipse my freshman year in my first semester there. I saw a lunar eclipse. That was really, really cool to see. But how does this prove? The shape of the Earth's shadow on the moon during lunar eclipses is always spherical. This is because the Earth is round and a round object casts a round shadow. Try it with a dark room, a flashlight, an orange, or a ball. You have a tough time getting a non-spherical shadow out of the ball. Now try the same activity with a dinner plate. You know that it is much easier to make shadows that are spheres rather than round. If the Earth were flat and shaped like the dinner plate, the Earth's shadow during a lunar eclipse would often be one of these non-round shapes. That makes sense. It could be oval or even just a thick line. This has never happened. The flat earth community attempts to address this hole in their theory through some creative arguments. Some flat earthers believe that there is an undetectable celestial body, not the earth, between the sun and the moon that casts a shadow on the moon. This object is the anti-moon or the shadow object. Okay. I mean, if we could see it, that'd be nice. But let's continue on. Right, looking at other planets to a telescope. I talked about this back when I was in the Dominican Republic, and I saw through a telescope planets. That was one of the, I saw Jupiter and I saw Saturn. That was one of the things where it was like mind exploding that those things are really out there, that I'm able to see those with my eyes, not a picture of them. So that was a all-time really cool experience. But yeah, you can see that those planets are round, obviously. Now the flat earthers claim that our planet is special and different from all other observable planets in our solar system. The Earth is a fundamentally different kind of body, a plane rather than a planet, much like how a basketball court is a fundamentally different kind of body to the basketballs which bounce on top of it. Interesting. The solar system sits on a layer above the plane of the Earth, says the TFES. To them, the Earth is the center of the universe and everything happens above it. This is a very self-centered worldview, if you ask me. I was not asking you. Drop the same object from different heights. So gravity pulls objects towards the center of the object. Since our Earth is round, the center of the object is the middle of the sphere of the Earth. It means that gravity pulls all objects straight down towards that central core. From our perspective, that direction is straight down. If our planet was flat, then gravity would similarly pull all objects towards the middle of the Earth. However, under the flat Earth model, this middle is in the North Pole rather than the center of a sphere. Interesting. This means that unless you were at the North Pole, objects would hit the ground slightly north from where they were dropped. This effect would become more pronounced at the higher up an object is dropped. If a ball is dropped from 3 feet high, the Arctic gravitational pull would only have 3 feet of height to pull the ball inwards. The same ball is dropped from 10 feet. That gravitational pull has 7 more feet of falling to act upon the ball to land further north than when the ball is dropped. Okay. And then take that further and further out. Gotcha. Take a ladder out and drop the ball from different steps. If it isn't an absurdly windy day, you'll notice the ball drops straight down from the ladder each step. If you dropped it from the top of a tight skyscraper, it would also drop straight down. That's because our Earth is round. And then secondly, the gravitational pull from the Arctic on a flat Earth would be stronger in the southern hemisphere compared to the northern hemisphere. As you move further from the center of gravity on the flat Earth, objects drop from the same height at increasingly southern latitudes to experience more displacement northwards. If you have a friend in Australia, South America, ask them if their objects fall straight down, and they do. All right. Watch the sun crawl up a hill during a sunset. Oh. Have you ever wished that the day wasn't over and chased the warm sun's rays up a hill during a sunset? If you have hills or mountains to your east that are visible from your neighborhood, watch them during the sunset. Once the sun rays disappear from your block, look up towards these hills. They will still be basking in the late sunlight. As the sunset progresses, you will see the line of light marching up towards the top of the hills. This rising line of light happens because our Earth is round. Okay, makes sense. And then it says also classic ship sailing off in the distance. All right. Go outside at night, which I have done as well. It's very, very cool, especially in a place, surprisingly, in this city. I'm probably like maybe 10 minutes from being in downtown Pittsburgh with traffic and everything. Maybe 10 minutes. I could possibly get there in under 10 minutes. If I wanted to just go simply downtown, I could get there and just park in the middle of the street. I could get there in 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes. Easy. No traffic, no nothing. Easy under 10 minutes. However, the light pollution in our area really is not that bad. That's because Pittsburgh's not a major city like New York City, where the light pollution is maybe 1,000 times more than here in this city. I mean, we do have quite a big downtown, but compared to other cities like New York or Los Angeles, it's there's no comparison. So going outside at night, especially more so back in Connecticut, it was much better there. And then in some other places, when we went to Portugal, it was also amazing to be out in Portugal and see that the night sky over there. Yeah, but going outside at night obviously can help you prove. All right, now let's see how the very, very friendly author ends it off. In conclusion, the flat earth movement is a group of people who believe that the earth is flat rather than spherical. They reject the scientific consensus that the earth is an oblate spheroid and instead argue that the earth is a flat disk, usually surrounded by an ice wall that prevents people from falling off the edge. The flat earth movement has gained increased visibility and attention in recent years, largely due to the internet and social media platforms. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence to the contrary, the movement has persisted and continues to attract followers who argue that the scientific establishment is conspiring to hide the truth about the shape of the earth. It is worth noting that the overwhelming majority of scientists, including those in fields such as astronomy, geology, and physics, consider the flat earth theory to be completely baseless and without merit. Yes. Here's the thing. I'm not a flat earther, but if part of their argument is that the scientific establishment is conspiring and they're all together in this, they're all in one group to say the earth is actually spherical when in reality it's flat, which I do not believe. But the argument from the flat earthers, or part of it, I should say, part of their argument is that the scientific establishment is in cahoots together. They're conspiring to keep this a secret. Saying that this final paragraph, it is worth noting that the overwhelming majority of scientists, including those in fields such as astronomy, geology, and physics, consider the flat earth theory to be completely baseless. Saying that does not disprove what the flat earthers are saying. Now, there are things that disprove what the flat earthers are saying, but in response to them saying that the scientific establishment is all in cahoots, the response to that being Well, the majority of scientists believe that this is completely baseless. That doesn't disprove their point. So I guess one for the flat earthers. They got to go up quite a hill, but I don't think that this author, whose tone I not a big fan of, not a big fan. Let's be respectful. There's no, yeah, you disagree with their beliefs, and even their beliefs are you 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 could say dangerous. You could say dangerous because there was somebody who, in their efforts to see if the Earth was flat, killed themselves. But they didn't do it purposefully. They weren't trying to kill themselves. They were trying to fly a rocket into the air and the parachute didn't deploy. Now, that was fueled obviously by them wanting to prove that the Earth was flat, but that was also probably because they're engineers and they wanted to see if they could develop this technology. And he also is a crazy guy, a Guinness World Record holder as well. And it sucks that he died, but we cannot be disrespectful. That's my thing. You can disagree with them. I mean, since Aristotle, as I read in that book earlier, we've kind of had a bunch of examples of ways to prove that the Earth is spherical and that the Earth is round. And there's still a lot of things that you could do as well. So that's it. That's it. Now let's go to their website. Got a great graphics team. Great. Great squad. Oh, here's our boy right here. Wow. Very cool. Steam-powered rocket engine. Longest limousine ramp jump. Yeah. Spanish football team, formerly known as Mostoles Balompié, has been officially renamed to Flat Earth FC by his president. What? Wow. Oh, look at this. On Behind the Curve. Now, this is a very famous Netflix documentary about flat Earth. It has come to our attention that this is by Tom Bishop in 2019. It has come to our attention that a documentary titled Behind the Curve has appeared on Netflix and is introducing significant numbers of new people into the flat Earth discussions. After viewing this piece, we feel that the work depicts a poorly researched flat Earth theory. It should be noted that the Flat Earth Society was not consulted with the rest of the documentary, with the science of the documentary, and that the topics discussed should be further researched. Wow. Wow. Very interesting. All right. Yeah, they're not the devil. Let's calm it down. I mean, you got to be respectful, you know? But flat Earth, most likely, we live on a sphere. It's pretty well established. And hopefully you learned a little thing or two from me. All right, on to our next story. Looking through the lens of time with the Millennium Camera. Arizona.edu. A University of Arizona experimental philosopher wants to encourage people to imagine 1,000 years into the future and plan accordingly. See right here, if you're watching the video, it's a simple pinhole camera mounted atop a pole, just looking out across Tucson, Arizona. Jonathan Keats envisioned the Millennium Camera, seen here peering across the desert landscape towards the Star Pass neighborhood west of Tumamoc Hill in Tucson, to provide not only a record of the past for future humans, but also to instigate discussion about what the current humans can do to influence the future. Dubbed the Millennium Camera, the device was dreamed up by the experimental philosopher Jonathan Keats, a research associate at the University of Arizona College of Fine Arts. For a camera to last so long, it must be simple. Through a pin-sized hole in a thin sheet of 24-karat gold, light will slip into a small copper cylinder mounted atop a steel pole. Over 10 centuries, sunlight reflected from Tucson's landscape will slowly fade a light-sensitive surface coated in many thin layers of rose matter, an oil paint pigment. When future humans open the camera in 1,000 years, they will see an extremely long exposure image of Tucson through all of its future iterations. Keats and a team of researchers from the Desert Laboratory on Tumamoc Hill installed the camera next to a bench facing west over the Star Pass neighborhood. Most people have a pretty bleak outlook on what lies ahead, he said. It's easy to imagine that people in 1,000 years could see a version of Tucson that is far worse than what we see today. Then it goes on. Conventional cameras typically rely on quick chemical reactions to capture an image. The problem is that future humans might not have technical knowledge to process images in specific ways, nor have the technology to do so. Very, very, very interesting. And then we'll continue on. By no means is the camera making a statement about development, about how we should build the city or not going forward. It is set there to invite us to ask questions and to enter into conversation and invite the perspective of future generations in the sense that they're in our minds. If we open it in the interim, then it diminishes the imagining that we need to be doing in response to not opening for 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a long time. All right. And then just talking about this particular hill. I've talked about a similar story, if you remember, in Texas. Jeff Bezos was building, I think his was also 1,000 years, maybe 10,000 years, but a clock that he put inside of a mountain that's going to last a very long time. So maybe we will be able to discover and find out over the course of time now. Watching like 5 years, this thing breaks down, or there's a snowstorm, or there's some kind of thing where, because this is just a thing on a pole. Somebody could crash a car into it. Somebody could take a bat and just knock it down over the course of 1,000 years. There's gold inside of that. There's 24-karat gold inside of that. Maybe in 563 years, there's a gold shortage. And then somebody says, wasn't there an article in like 2000 something? Back when they were in the 2000s before they hit the 2500s? Wasn't there an article in the 2000s about gold being in this thing? Let's get that. That could happen too. Very, very interesting. Kind of a cool experiment as well too. Just consider, and I think things like this are important. I would like to actually go visit it so that I could say that I was there and be a part of this specific device that hopefully, much like Jeff Bezos's clock, can last the full amount of time. So very, very cool. Here, on to our next story. This is from Science Alert. Let's go right here. Experts outline 14 ways humanity could drive itself to extinction. This is a fascinating study, I guess. really cool. I'm gonna spend a lot of time actually going through this particular study because I think this is cool how they actually performed it. But obviously the findings of it are cool as well, and also the scale to which they're thinking. So, new research led by a team from the University of Stockholm in Sweden outlines 14 different evolutionary traps that our global population could potentially be ensnared by, ultimately leading to our demise. According to the team behind the study, part of the problem is that we've been doing too well for ourselves. Our dominance and success is leading to dangerous consequences. We winners, baby. What can you say? Anyways, going on. Now we're going through what's known as a polycrisis. A what? A polycrisis. What's a polycrisis? A polycrisis is where there are multiple threats that are threatening to bring the Anthropocene era to an end sooner rather than later. Now, what is the Anthropocene era? And what are some examples of a polycrisis where there are multiple threats to ending our civilization? Well, we'll talk about it. The Anthropocene is a proposed geological epoch dating from the commencement of significant human impact on Earth's geology, landscape, limnology, and ecosystems, including but not limited to anthropogenic climate change. The nature of the effects of human activity on Earth can be seen, for example, in biodiversity loss, climate change, biogeography, nocturnality parameters, changes in geomorphology and stratigraphy, record, fossil record, trace elements, various dates, 12,000 to 15,000 years ago to as recently as the 1960s. Okay, so this is the current time that we are dealing with currently. This is what we're in. The Anthropocene is a proposed geological epoch. Now, what is a geological epoch? An epoch is the second smallest geochronological unit, is equivalent to chronosynatic series. There are certain seven defined epochs and one informal one. All right. The geological timescale or geological is a representation of time based on the rock record of Earth. Okay. So we are in a particular period right now, and it could be going back to 15,000 years ago, or it could be going back to less than 100 years ago. Depends on who you ask. So that's the era that we're in right now that could potentially end sooner rather than later. Of the 14 possible evolutionary dead ends for humanity, 5 are labeled as global: simplification, growth for growth, overshoot, and contagion. Now, what is simplification? Symptoms becoming too specialized to adapt, such as monoculture farming. Yes, monoculture farming is very bad, not only for the soil. It's very, very bad for the soil. But also it's just at scale, very hard to do because of the water and obviously the soil. Then we have growth for growth, a nonstop pursuit of growth harming well-being. Nonstop pursuit of growth harming well-being. Okay. I get that. Overshoot, using more than Earth can provide. Mining every single resource on the face of the Earth is going to take quite some time, but it is something that could indeed happen. We get all of the oil, we get all of the natural gas, we get all of the minerals, the rocks, all of that stuff. If we mine it all, we gotta find someplace else. And I've talked about before asteroid mining on the podcast, which I think is something very interesting that we should definitely, as a planet, look into possibly getting into. Division, international conflict, wars. Obviously, there's many currently going on right now, and contagion, infectious diseases, for example. So a super deadly disease, one that doesn't just kill 1% of the people. No, it kills 99%. And it also infects a couple billion people. That would be the end. There's no there's no amount of lockdowns that could stop that. There's you get into a situation like that, it's bye-bye. It's the end of the world. But hopefully we don't have to deal with that. Another 5 are described as technology traps. Interesting one. They are infrastructure lock-in, chemical pollution, existential technology, technological autonomy, and dis/misinformation. Okay, infrastructure lock-in, as with fossil fuels. So if we only use fossil fuels for the rest of the time and never develop any other kind of thing, or even with electric, if we just go in the direction of renewables and electric only. I mean, if you're using only batteries, you're going to need a lot of lithium, or you're going to need some new kind of technology that can support a different form of battery that is not lithium ion, because that has to be mined out of the surface of the earth. And it's not like that lithium is out here in Ohio. No, that's in Africa, that's in Asia, it's in places all over the earth and not in America. So we have to outsource that. Then moving on, chemical pollution. I mean, I remember when the Gulf of Mexico, when that oil rig blew up and it completely, for a period of time, destroyed the water in that area. I mean, you have obviously Louisiana right down there, New Orleans, a place known for their seafood, no longer able to serve that because the fish and the shrimp and all of the food that they were getting from the ocean was contaminated. So something like this could have effects on people's food. Then existential technologies such as nuclear arms. Obviously, if we're dropping nukes on each other, you're done. Technological autonomy. This is artificial intelligence. I mean, this is one that, as we go right now, things, especially with artificial intelligence, it's an exponential process. It is, you look at what ChatGPT was 6 months ago, you look at it what it was a year ago. Just ChatGPT. I'm not talking any other AI model. It is a completely different thing than what it is currently in its form today. Just ChatGPT. The things I can do, I only have the free version, but the things that I can do with it today are much more different. One, because I have a knowledge of how to prompt it to do certain things that I'm asking it to do, write certain things, to perform certain tasks that I would like for it to do. That type of stuff I think is very, 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 very interesting. And if it gets to a point where it's so advanced that it's able to outsmart us, if it hasn't already, if it gets to a point where it's able to manipulate humans who are programming this and to maybe make up fake reports saying, in order for me to work at my best, I need to make sure that I have this plugin or that thing turned on and this thing turned off, and I need this oversight over this particular process, and it could manipulate this person through this long process, ultimately giving AI the power to take control and basically run whatever it wants. Even if you shut it off, it's still able to function type stuff, which is very scary. And then dis or misinformation. I mean, you have governments lying to people, which is never a good thing. You have civil unrest, and the government is lying about who is causing that civil unrest, lying about wars and that kind of stuff. That can lead to a lot of protests. That can lead to a lot of problems in a particular country. The remaining four are called structural traps by the researchers. These ones are short-termism, overconsumption, biosphere disconnect, and local social capital loss, where an increasing digital world cuts off social interaction and potentially contributes to further division. Yes, that is not good. Short-termism, structural. I don't know exactly what they're saying there, but overconsumption, obviously, if people are unhealthy, people are over consuming food, over consuming alcohol, over consuming drugs, over consuming social media, can have really bad consequences. Biosphere disconnect. Very interesting that they put that there, which I think is something that's real. Living in New York City versus even, let's take Pittsburgh. Living here, there is a park that I can go to that has trees, and I can get into a certain section of it where I don't see any skyscrapers. I don't see any buildings. I don't see any houses. I don't see any wooden structures. It's just the woods and a path. And there's something about that that's so relaxing. In the summertime when it's 85 degrees out and you're walking out there and it's not too hot and the wind's just right and you're just walking down that, and it's so relaxing to do that. But if you don't have that in a city such as New York, I know there's obviously Central Park, but there's not too many places in Central Park anymore that are amazing, that are beautiful, where you can get completely separated from the city of New York City. You're always going to see those skyscrapers. You're always going to hear the traffic. You're always going to hear everything. It's a big city. And then local social capital loss. Obviously, not having friends is a huge, huge issue for populations. If nobody's interacting with each other, nobody's hanging out, nobody's going out to restaurants, not only does that hurt the local economy, that hurts the local social power that those people have, that togetherness that they have. And if an issue or a problem were to arise and nobody's friends with anybody, nobody knows anybody, you could have a real breakdown very fast. Evolutionary traps are a well-known concept in the animal world. What's more, 12 of these are reckoned to be in an advanced state. Only technological autonomy and local social capital loss have yet to develop into concerning problems. Technological autonomy, AI? It's gonna get there. It's gonna get there. It's going to get to a point where we won't know how to slow it down. It will be able to create its own versions of itself. It's going to be able to replicate. It's inevitable, because the more people want to make these systems better and better, there's going to be people who say leave that company, and they take that same idea and they say, I want to create an AI model that tells me how to run a company. I want to create an AI model that tells me how to run a political campaign. I want an AI model that tells me how to run my political office in which I hold the governorship of a state over. I want AI to run my presidential campaign. I want AI to be the president. These are not things that are fairy tale, out of the world, things that could not happen. Maybe Trump wouldn't use AI because he probably wouldn't want it telling him what to do. There are candidates who say they win because they consulted with an artificial intelligence that is made to help people win elections. You say, Here's kind of my campaign strategy. Here's what I kind of want to attract in terms of voters. Here's what my stances are on things. Can you help me run this campaign? And it says, yes, absolutely. And then you hand over all your information, all your polling data, all of your transcripts from your interviews, your TV appearances, everything, and you feed it into it, and it says, you know what? Maybe you should change your slogan from "We love America" to "America is us" for this reason, that reason, that. This is not something that is just impossible to happen. We don't have the technology for this. 10 years. 10 years from now, 2034. This is going to be technology that might not be available to us in a free version of an app, but to people who are trying to run the world. This technology is going to exist, and they're going to have access to this. And then it's going to be up to them whether or not they can use it, and if they can, whether they will use it. Even more alarmingly, these dead ends tend to reinforce each other, meaning it's likely that we'll get trapped in more than one. Evolutionary traps are a well-known concept in the animal world. Just like many insects are attracted by light, an evolutionary reflex that can get them killed in the modern world, humankind is at risk of responding to new phenomena in harmful ways. It's a pretty bleak picture, but the researchers aren't giving up yet. I don't know why that was so hard to say. Here is the study right here. Now let's go into the actual study. The Anthropocene is characterized by accelerating change and global challenges of increasing complexity, inspired by what some have called a polycrisis. We explore whether the human trajectory of increasing complexity and influence on the Earth's system could become a form of trap for humanity. Based on an adaptation of the evolutionary traps concept to a global human context, we present results from a participatory mapping. We identify 14 traps and categorize them as either global, technology, or structural trap. An assessment reveals that 12 tracks, 86%, could be in an advanced phase of trapping with high risk of hard-to-reverse lock-ins and growing risk of negative impacts on human well-being, meaning that they are in advanced states where they're close to, we can't turn it back. We're at a place where we're over the cliff. Like, there's no going back after this point. It's gotten that bad. So 86% of these traps are in high risk, are an advanced phase of them, and they are high risk of hard to reverse lock-ins. Not good. 10 traps, or 71%, currently see growing trends in their indicators. Revealing the systemic nature of the polycrisis, we assess that Anthropocene traps often interact reinforcingly, 45% of pairwise interactions, and rarely in a dampening fashion. We end by discussing capacities that will be important for navigating these systemic challenges in pursuit of global stability. Introduction, and then I really think you should read this because they do a really good job at just explaining what they're talking about. Talking about the crises that are currently going on, why they chose to use these as well. I mean, this is great, making sense of human evolutionary traps. You can take a look at this right here. Initiation of new multi-level trajectory through innovation, scaling, masking, trapping. Highly recommend that you go into this. But let's go into their methods. This is something that I had a question with. So what did they do the study with? How did they go about finding out whether or not that these things that they determine are some of the biggest possible things that could end us as a society? How do they figure out that we're in these late stages? Methods. To identify analyze a broad set of potential Anthropocene traps, we ran a set of participatory exercise, including seminars, workshops, and questionnaires at the Stockholm Resilience Center from 2020 to 2022. Interesting that they would do it during this time frame, because this is prime time COVID, right? So you ask people about the potential of a pandemic, of a disease that kills the majority of people on Earth. People like, yes, that could happen. So this is fresh in their minds, which is interesting. The initial exploration and identification of traps had 3 stages: electronic supplementary material, figure S1 for details; system boundaries 1, familiarization with evolutionary dynamics 2, and identification of evolutionary traps 3. The insights from these activities provided the basis for the 4th stage of the study: assessment and analysis of traps. All right. I don't want to read this whole thing, but I do think it's important to talk about it somewhat. Anthropocene dynamics and system boundaries. We started by surveying general dynamics of the Anthropocene system with the purpose of setting system boundaries for the subsequent exercise. Now, let's not forget Anthropocene, proposed geological epoch commencement. Remember what we're talking about, because I feel like we keep going back and forth. We keep talking about the Anthropocene system and all this stuff. The time period in which we're in is what we're talking about. This current time period of what we're in, where we have so many of these issues that are at advanced stages, are important to address and also see how bad will they get. So this is what, when it's saying the Anthropocene system, keep that in mind. We collected 61 processes and dynamics from 28 respondents. From this survey, it was clear that the scope of our further assessment explicitly needed to consider the technological, social, and economic domains of the Earth system, including human behavior, as well as biodiversity and ecosystem. 28 people responded. So this is not, not to diminish anything, but this is not 28,000 people responding. This is just 28 people. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Establishing a shared understanding of evolutionary dynamics. Number 2. As the experience of participants with evolutionary dynamics varied greatly, we sought to create a common understanding of core topics through 4 seminars with 12 internal and external speakers presenting conceptual, theoretical, and empirical work relating to evolution in the Anthropocene. So this time period that we're currently in. In addition to internal presentations by the authors of this paper regarding previous and ongoing work, external speakers included Timothy Lunton, David Sloan Wilson, and Jareen Vanderberg, covering systems, perspective, multi-level selection, and evolutionary economics. And for number 3, identifying Anthropocene traps. With system boundaries set and an enhanced understanding of key concepts, we proceeded to solicit written suggestions for Anthropocene traps from a focus group of 10 participants, all authors who had participated in the previous activities. So 10 people they brought this down to. These suggestions were then subject to common scrutiny and consolidation through 2 half-day workshops. The first workshop included 8 participants from the focus group and aimed to review the initial set of traps, consolidating them into comparable groups of similar topical granularity, as well as allowing time to think about traps that had not been identified in the written solicitation. The second workshop comprised 14 participants, including some not involved in suggesting initial traps, who served as scrutinizers. The workshop focused on review and agreement of proposed criteria for defining traps, establishing the final set of traps, and a general model of how traps evolve. And then we set 3 criteria for identifying a phenomenon as a potential Anthropocene trap. 1, that it can be described as evolving from an initially adaptive process. 2, that it, at the global level, shows sign of undesirable impacts on human well-being or has been hypothesized to show such signs in the future. Artificial intelligence. 3, that it has a trapping mechanism that makes it harder to escape from negative impacts once this mechanism is activated. So after that, they got their 14 traps that we talked about. And you can see system dynamics, technological, innovation loop, boom, 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 boom. See all this stuff right here. I really highly, I know most people don't like to read studies and stuff like that. I mean, this isn't the most exciting thing to me either. I'll say that much. But this is one of the few times where this stuff, obviously the Anthropocene stuff, kind of hard to understand at first. So I think it's important to just, when saying Anthropocene, that's just the current time period that we're in. We're in 2024. We're in the Anthropocene epoch. We're just in our current day where we've gone, basically technologically. We're not going 600,000 years ago. We're not going 600 million years ago. We're not going a billion years ago. No, in kind of our current state of technology, whether you think that's 10,000 years ago with the whoever, or you want to go back to the Egyptians, or you want to go back to the time of Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago. You want to go to even as early as the 1960s or the 1940s with the creation of the nuclear bomb and the atomic bomb program. All of that stuff is part of this particular period. But continuing on, I mean, I guess we don't have to go into their results. Just go. Whoa. We acknowledge funding from the IKEA Foundation. That's cool. Dang. I did not know that. That's very cool. IKEA. But yes, that is Evolution of the Polycrisis, Anthropocene Traps That Challenge Global Sustainability. So, very interesting stuff right there. Let's continue on. Our next story. What if life on Earth began when interstellar objects crashed here? Something I've talked about on the podcast a couple of times. Is about the OSIRIS-REx mission, which I do have an update on, which I mentioned in the beginning of the show. But let's talk about exactly what we have going on with this particular one. Let me turn the boom. So back a couple of years ago, there was this thing called Oumuamua. And that's what we're going to have to start off talking about, this basically asteroid that came from outside of the solar system that many believe was a artifact or a signal sent to us by a civilization in a different galaxy as a message to us. What that message was, whether it's a drone to spy on us, whether it's a message that they would expect us to open and read and get some kind of wisdom, or if it was some other thing. That's what some people believe that this object called Oumuamua was. Now, what is this thing? Because in order to understand what the seeding of our planet is, we do have to talk about Oumuamua, which I don't think I've done on this show. This is from NASA. Oumuamua is the first confirmed object from another star to visit our solar system. This interstellar interloper appears to be a rocky, cigar-shaped object with a somewhat reddish hue. The object was named Oumuamua by its discoverers. It means a message from afar arriving first in Hawaii. Oumuamua is up to 1/4 mile wide, long and highly elongated, perhaps 10 times as long as it is wide. That aspect ratio is greater than that of any asteroid or comet observed in our solar system to date. While its elongated shape is quite surprising, and unlike objects seen in our solar system, it may provide new clues into how other solar systems are formed. And then in the video here, you can see it. This is it. And then how far away is it? Go. Oh. Where is it in relation to us right now? So it's pretty far away. All right, I guess I won't be able to see exactly where it is. The observations suggest this unusual object had been wandering through the Milky Way, unattached to any star system for hundreds of millions of years before its chance encounter with our star system. Immediately after its discovery, telescopes around the world were called into action to measure the object's orbit, brightness, and color. Urgency for viewing from ground-based telescopes was vital to get the best data. Combining the images from the FORS measurement on the ESO telescope using 4 different filters with those of other large telescopes, a team of astronomers led by Corinne Meach of the Institute for Astronomy in Hawaii found that Oumuamua varies in brightness by a factor of 10 as it spins on its axis every 7.3 hours. No known asteroid or comet from our solar system varies so widely in brightness with such a large ratio between length and width. The most elongated objects we have seen to date are no more than 3 times longer than they are wide. This is 10. Interesting. Then here's a picture of it. Could not really see it very well. The interstellar object Oumuamua is at the center of this image, circled in blue, surrounded by the trails of faint stars that are smeared as the telescopes tracked the moving comet. So that's from the telescope. This unusually big variation in brightness means that the object is highly elongated, about 10 times as long as it is wide, with a complex convoluted shape. We also found that it had a reddish color, similar to objects in the outer solar system, and confirmed that it is completely inert without the faintest hint of dust around it. These properties suggest that Oumuamua is dense, composed of rocky and possibly metals, has no water or ice, and that its surface was reddened due to the effects of irradiation from cosmic rays over hundreds of millions of years. A few large ground-based telescopes continue to track the fading object as it receded from our planet. 2 of NASA's space telescopes, Hubble and Spitzer, tracked the object traveling around 85,700 miles per hour, or 38.3 kilometers per second relative to the sun. Okay. Astronomers estimate that an interstellar object similar to Oumuamua passes through the inner solar system about once per year, but they are faint and hard to spot and have been missed until now. It is only recently that survey telescopes such as Pan-STARRS 1 are powerful enough to have a chance to discover them. So that is Oumuamua. Okay. One thing that we could all agree on was that the detection of this object indicated that ISOs regularly enter our solar system. What's more, subsequent research has revealed that on occasion, some of these objects come to Earth as meteorites and impact the surface. So there could have been at one point, like we just had said, Oumuamua, those kind of objects where they're coming possibly from outside of our own solar system, possibly we get one of those a year, but we just don't know about it because we're not detecting these. I mean, this thing is pretty large, but there are many other ones that potentially are, I don't know, I would say 100 feet across that are very, very small, that are so millions of miles away from us and never come too close to us. Seeing that kind of stuff is very hard to see, obviously. So maybe we have hundreds of these every year. We just aren't able to track them. But how many over the course of time have come into and impacted Earth? Dozens, hundreds, thousands, millions? Because if that's the case and they seeded the Earth, they brought with them different metals, different compounds, they had water on them, they have oxygen, they have different whatever that they have on these different atomic molecules on them that they bring to our planet that become a part of our atmosphere, that become a part of the very soil, the water, everything here on this planet, and could potentially start the journey towards life. In a recent paper, a team of researchers considered the implication of ISOs being responsible for panspermia, the theory that the seeds of life exist throughout the universe and are distributed by asteroids, comets, and other celestial objects. According to their results, ISOs can potentially seed hundreds of thousands or possibly billions of Earth-like planets throughout the galaxy. The team was led by David Coe, a senior student at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. He was joined by Peter Plavchan, an associate professor of physics and astronomy at George Mason University, and the director of the Mason Observatories, and Michael Summers, a professor of astrophysics and planetary science at GMU. Their paper, The Implications of Oumuamua on Panspermia, recently appeared online as being reviewed for publication by the American Astronomical Society. To briefly summarize, panspermia is the theory that life was introduced to Earth by objects from interstellar medium. Let's keep going. Here we go. 2 years later, after Oumuamua, a second ISO was detected entering the solar system, except there was no mystery about its nature this time. As it neared our sun, it was called 2I Borisov, formed a tail indicating that it was a comet. Subsequent research has shown that some of these objects become meteorites that impact on Earth's surface, and a few have even been identified. This includes CNEOS 2014-0108, a meteor that crashed into the Pacific Ocean in 2014 and was the subject of the study by the Galileo Project. As Coe explained, the detection of these interstellar visitors also has implication for panspermia and the ongoing debate about the origins of life on Earth. And also, I think, interesting questions about the origins, or the possibility, I should say, not origins, but the possibility that we're being sent messages. I don't know. Maybe there's another civilization out here that says, let me, bing, shoot this meteorite to land into what they call the Pacific Ocean that gets discovered, and hopefully they are able to get our message. Or maybe this was something that millions and millions of years ago, there was a civilization on the brink of collapse at the end of their society. And they thought, you know what? I don't know how much longer we'll be here, but let's at least send out this message. Let's at least try and help another civilization out. Unfortunately, ours is coming to the end. Our experiment on this planet didn't work, and we're gonna tragically die. But let's do one last hoorah and send out this message to this planet that we can see has life on it. That's millions and millions of light years away. Let's send this thing out, and hopefully it lands there. That's a possibility. That's 100% a possibility. To say that's not is silly. If we were on the edge of crashing down, of disease and political strife, and you have nuclear bombs going off, and you have the world basically coming to an end, have a giant meteor that's going to take out the entire planet coming into contact with us, why wouldn't we? And guess what? There's only one Earth, and there's humans here on Earth. Now, who's to say that there is not another planet out there where they didn't evolve the way that we evolved? Maybe here on Earth we wouldn't send anything out because we're too focused on trying to save ourselves. But maybe there's a planet out there where they said, Our demise is coming. Let's send out a message of wisdom to these other places around the universe. That's a possibility. It's not science fiction, it's a possibility. Now, is that what's happening here? I do not know. I do not know. Back to the article. Oumuamua serves as a novel data point for panspermia models, as we can use its physical properties, particularly its mass, size, and implied ISM number density to model the number, density, and mass density of objects in the interstellar medium. These models allow us to estimate the flux density and mass flux of objects in the interstellar medium, and with these models, we can approximate the number of objects that impacted Earth over 0.8 billion years. Knowing the total number of collision events on Earth over that 0.8 billion year period is vital for panspermia, as a greater number of collision events with interstellar objects made over that period imply a higher probability for panspermia. In short, the physical properties of the interstellar Oumuamua allow for the creation of mathematical models that determine the plausibility of panspermia. In addition to the mathematical models that consider the physics behind panspermia, Cow and his colleagues applied a biological model that describes the minimum object size needed to shield extremophiles from astrophysical events. Things like supernova, gamma ray bursts, large asteroid impacts, passing by stars. As addressed in a previous article, recent research has shown that cosmic rays erode all but the largest ISOs before they reach another system. So that's an interesting thing about Oumuamua. It wasn't completely eroded by the cosmic rays from our own sun. Maybe there was way out when it was first coming in, it had sort of a protective layer on the outside, and the sun kind of broke that down, but it was able to get fairly close to Earth without being completely destroyed. Based on their combined physical and biological models, the team derived estimates for the number of ejecta that struck Earth before life emerged. According to the oldest fossilized evidence found in Western Australia from rocks dating to the Archean eon, different from epochs, I don't know all this stuff. The earliest life forms emerged 3.5 billion years ago. Said Cow, we conclude that the maximum probability that panspermia sparked life on Earth is on the order of magnitude of 10 to 5 or 0.001%. Although this probability appears low, under the most optimistic conditions, potentially 4 times 109 total habitable zone planets exist in our galaxy, which could indicate a total of 104 habitable worlds harboring life just in our galaxy alone. So possibly 104 planets in this galaxy have life on them, and there are billions and billions of planets. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if it's a very low percentage of planets actually make it, and we're one of those planets, yeah, that makes sense. Additionally, we restricted our analysis to the first 0.8 billion years of Earth's history prior to the earliest fossilized evidence for life. But because life can be seeded at any point in a planet's lifetime, and planets have significantly longer habitable lifespans, up 5 to 10 billion years, we boosted our estimate for the total number of habitable worlds harboring life in our galaxy by 1 order of magnitude. From this, they obtained a final result of about 105 habitable planets that could harbor life in our galaxy. However, these estimates are based on the most optimistic projections regarding planetary habitability. So it could be 10. There might be 10, or there might just be one planet in the Milky Way galaxy called Earth where there's life on it. That's a possibility. And now apply that same philosophy to the other places. There could be a lot of different worlds out there. We're just stretched out far too wide. In other words, it assumes that all Earth-sized rocky planets orbiting within habitable zones are capable of supporting life, meaning they have thick atmospheres, magnetic fields, liquid water on their surfaces, and all life-bearing ejecta that survive entering our atmosphere are capable of depositing microbes on the surface. There's a little video right here of a Mua. You see Joe Rogan here talking about what exactly that object is. Very cool. As Cal summarized, the results do not prove panspermia or settle the debate on the origins of life here on Earth. Nevertheless, they provide valuable insight and constraints on the possibility that life came here via objects like a Mua. Very, very cool. Then here is another article. I'll post this in the description to the video. This is kind of going more deep into yeah, this is originally from the day that they discovered this device. You see this stuff right here. There it comes in right there from the top. Gets shot back out. This was basically one of the first articles on the topic when they discovered it. And then this is kind of what they used to look at it. The Pan stars, a single research project at the Institute for Astronomy, 1.8 meter diameter telescope in Maui. Almost 1.4 billion pixels. Damn! Crazy. And here is the paper in all of its glory. Now, this paper, I'm not going to go through it. But I will include it in the description, and I do recommend that you go look into it, because I think this is pretty cool. All right. Moving on into our final story. This is something that we've been talking about for quite some time. Obviously, I am talking about the OSIRIS-REx mission. The asteroid Bennu, which they went to, they got a sample from, and they returned back from. They have finally been able to open the lid and get a look at what's inside. And you can see in this image right here, this is a top-down view of the OSIRIS-REx touch-and-go sample acquisition mechanism. Head with the lid removed, revealing the remainder of the asteroid sample inside. You can really see all of that. Well, basically just looks like black dirt. The Astromaterials Curation team at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston has completed the disassembly of the OSIRIS-REx sampler head to reveal the remainder of the asteroid Bennu sample inside. On January 10th, they successfully removed 2 stubborn fasteners that had prevented the final steps of opening the touch-and-go sample acquisition mechanism head. Erica Blumenfeld, creative lead for the Advanced Imaging and Visualization of Astromaterials, and Joe Abersold captured this photograph of the open tag SAM head, including the asteroid material inside, using manual high-resolution precision photography and the semi-automated focus stack procedure. The result is an image that shows extreme details of the sample. You can definitely see that. You don't get to see like the scale of what it is. There's nothing really reference it to. Next, The curation team will remove the round metal collar and prepare the glove box to transfer the remaining sample from the tag SAM head into pie wedge sample trays. The trays will be photographed and then weighed. The final mass of the sample will be determined in the coming weeks. The curation team members had already collected 2.48 ounces or 70.3 grams of asteroid material from the sample hardware before the lid was removed, surpassing the agency's goals of bringing at least 60 grams to Earth. So they got plenty more. Curation team will release a catalog of all the Bennu samples later this year, which will allow scientists and institutions to submit requests for research. So they're making progress. They're coming along. They're chugging along. Oh man. I don't know if I'm gonna record tomorrow. I might. I do want to talk about some sports. But unfortunately, for today's episode, I brought Carmela back. I just went, it was a nice little jump cut. But I just went back and now I picked her up. And so you would expect for her to spend 3 hours playing with her friends, that she would be pretty tired, but she is not. So gonna go spend some time and hang out with her. Start prepping some dinner. We're making some chicken tonight. May or may not have some pictures that I post. And you'll be seeing those. If I do end up posting them, you already know. But thank you so much. This has been the Zach Moore podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day. I really do appreciate it.